9 kids, I don't have any of them because the fathers don't want to take responsibility, and I'm not going to raise a kid by myself because look at the world right now. It's like,
crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, inflation, nobody's getting food stamps anymore. Even I got cut off, and I'm SMI. I'm supposed to be getting a check still, and I don't because I'm running out of work credits.
No home, unable to raise her children. This is not a choice, it is Lois's current reality, right in the middle of Los Angeles, one of the wealthiest cities in the United States. The LA welfare system cut off her food stamps simply because she ran out of work credits. Los Angeles is spending billions of dollars to solve the problem. But for people like Lois, that system doesn't save them. It was simply never designed for them in the first place.
LA, like they say, to live in LA is to die in LA, because real shit, it's like when you live in such a place where such struggle, you learn to see the raw beauty within the ugly truth. Real shit. Like, I love it here, but I hate it here. It's like I wanna be part of a change, yet I'm also part of the problem, you know?
Today we're heading into a place that gave birth to Hollywood, a city of limitless wealth, luxury estates, and billion-dollar industries shaping global culture. But in the very same place, fentanyl moves through the streets with alarming ease, and under a relentless sun, pushing past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, around 38 degrees Celsius, people endure the heat with nowhere to escape. Tents line the sidewalks. Survival becomes a daily calculation.
It's kind of disgusting, man. You know, like I've grown up here in Los Angeles my whole life, and it's like seeing the changes over time and how much worse it's gotten. It's crazy, man. You know, like I would not take my son here at all.
So what is really happening behind the image of prosperity? What direct threats are emerging on the ground? And how did a system with massive spending begin to break down in plain sight? Abrupt service cuts, projects that never reach completion. A system that isn't just struggling, it's failing in real time, right on the asphalt of Los Angeles. And when you look at what's unfolding on the streets of Los Angeles, the question is no longer, why did Lois end up like this? It becomes how many others are living in the exact same situation, but no one is listening.
There are now tens of thousands of homeless people living on the streets of LA, suffering from severe addiction and mental illness.
And the city is now spending a record amount of money to bring the homeless inside, but that money isn't helping the most vulnerable on the streets.
$418 million. That's the number Los Angeles pushed into homelessness programs in 2025, and on paper, it looks aggressive, even decisive. But when you break it down at street level, the output doesn't match the input. Roughly 1 in 10 people actually transition off the street into stable housing. The rest? They cycle sidewalk to shelter to motel back to sidewalk. No stability, no long-term reset. Let's be blunt. This isn't just a funding issue, it's a systems failure. First, follow the money. According to the city administrative officer's explosive report from February 2026, shockingly only about 10%, roughly $42 million, actually went toward permanent housing that pulls people off the streets for good. The rest, over $319 million portion, is routed into short-term interventions, temporary beds, sanitation services, outreach teams, and emergency motel placements. These are necessary, yes, but they are maintenance tools, not exit strategies. The city now stares down massive budget shortfalls, $181 million projected next year, ballooning to $247 million the year after. That means painful 10 to 15% cuts are coming fast, right when encampments remain volatile and the human cost on the streets stays devastating.
And now Mayor Bass is talking about wanting to rebuild the city while cutting this essential program that's going to literally leave thousands of workers more vulnerable to wage theft, more vulnerable to deportation, more vulnerable to exploitation.
When you're tracking real survival rates out on Skid Row and downtown encampments while people are still dying from fentanyl overdoses in tents, and sudden fires rip through camps at night, this funding model is quietly making street life more sustainable instead of forcing real change. Mobile services and temporary beds might look compassionate from City Hall, yet they often just extend the time individuals remain exposed to extreme heat violence and addiction with no permanent escape route in sight. If hundreds of millions are being spent every year, why are the tents still multiplying? Then there's administrative drag. Multiple agencies overlapping contracts, layers of approval time and money bleed out before real-world impact even begins. By the time services reach the street, they're often diluted, delayed, or disconnected from what people actually need to stabilize. Consistent housing, mental health care, and addiction treatment working together, not in fragments. So the real question isn't how much Los Angeles is spending. It's this: what exactly is that money engineered to do, solve the problem, or sustain it? The real danger facing people on Los Angeles streets in early 2026 isn't abstract policy talk. It's the raw physical threat that hits every single day and night. Here's the first gut punch. Most outsiders don't grasp the deadly mix of widespread fentanyl use, and relentless blazing sun has created a survival nightmare that pushes human endurance to the absolute limit. People are literally cooking under triple-digit heat while battling the most potent street drug this country has ever seen. Even though overdose deaths dropped enough to bring overall homeless mortality down 10% for the first time in a decade, the risk remains brutally high, still 46 times higher than for the general population. But nothing illustrates the sudden violence of street life better than what went down on March 9th. Late that night, fire ripped through a homeless encampment near 2198 East 14th Street in downtown LA. Firefighters rushed in and knocked down the flames, but witnesses reported one woman who regularly slept there was unaccounted for initially. In these encampments, one stray spark from cooking bad wiring or a discarded cigarette can wipe out everything a person owns and take lives in minutes. This isn't some isolated incident. It's the constant, terrifying background risk when hundreds live packed together with zero real fire protection. Worse yet, LA County delivered a devastating blow just weeks earlier. In February 2026, officials signed off on nearly $200 million in cuts to homeless services to plug a gaping budget hole. The Pathway Home program, which clears encampments and connects people to shelter, got slammed with a $92 million reduction, forcing the shutdown of 13 sites. That directly translates to fewer outreach workers, fewer available beds, and more vulnerable people left exposed on the pavement at the worst possible time. To make matters even more infuriating, one high-profile housing project continues to mock the entire system. The former Ramada Inn, bought years ago to become permanent supportive housing, has burned through nearly $20 million in taxpayer dollars, yet still sits mostly empty after almost 4 years of delays and bureaucratic screw-ups. At roughly $625,000 per future unit, the waste is staggering, while real human beings keep dying and suffering just blocks away. The uncomfortable truth that more people on the inside are starting to admit is this: when you mix lethal street conditions with sudden service cuts and projects that never actually open the system, isn't just failing, it's actively making survival on the streets harder than it needs to be. These aren't statistics. They're daily life and death calculations happening right now on the asphalt of Los Angeles. Despite the black hole budget bleeding hundreds of millions, LA is finally racking up some hard-fought survival wins on the streets, and the numbers prove it. Here's the first jaw-dropping hook that shocked even longtime insiders. Overall deaths among the homeless population dropped a full 10% in early 2026, the first real decline in a decade. That wasn't luck. It came straight from fewer fentanyl overdoses thanks to faster outreach teams pulling people into treatment before the next hit killed them. On the pavement, that single stat translates to dozens of bodies that didn't end up in the morgue, real human beings still breathing through another brutal LA summer. But the biggest game-changer insiders are tracking is Mayor Karen Bass's Inside Safe program. It aggressively clears encampments and funnels thousands straight into shelter beds. The SAFE task force has already connected hundreds more to temporary housing, yanking them out of triple-digit heat, nightly violence, and open-air drug markets. Add in the half-cent sales tax from Measure A that's pouring billions into the system, plus the fresh $1 million handed to Little Tokyo Service Center in March 2026 for prevention work, and the city can legitimately claim street homelessness dropped 17.5% locally, while unsheltered numbers fell 9% statewide. Bass herself put it bluntly: Inside Safe is saving lives and actually moving the needle. Yet here's the second controversial hook that sparks heated debate in every backroom meeting. Are these gains real progress, or just a temporary band-aid on a gunshot wound? The same officials cutting $200 million elsewhere are now touting these wins even as the Ramada Inn project still sits empty and more encampments keep popping up blocks away. From street level, the difference is night and day. A shelter cot beats dying under a tarp any night of the week. But the ugly truth insiders whisper is this: when budget knives come out again, these hard-won beds and outreach teams could vanish overnight. The system finally started delivering measurable survival results, yet it's still one bad funding cycle away from sliding right back into the same deadly cycle. Bottom line, the progress is undeniable and brutally needed. For once, the numbers show people are actually getting off the pavement and staying alive longer. Whether City Hall can lock these gains in before the next shortfall hits, that's the fight everyone's watching right now on the streets of Los Angeles. Los Angeles is still the epicenter of America's homelessness crisis, heading into early 2026, and the raw numbers on the ground don't pull any punches. Here's the first jaw-dropping hook that's got every outreach veteran talking. The Greater LA Homeless Count just wrapped its massive January 2026 operation. Thousands of volunteers hit the streets before dawn, tallying every tent, every cardboard lean-to, and every person sleeping rough across the entire county. Official results won't drop until late spring or early summer, but when they land, they'll unlock hundreds of millions in federal and state funding that can mean the difference between another winter on the pavement or a real roof overhead. Leaning on the latest 2025 benchmark data, LA County is still carrying roughly 67,000 to 75,000 homeless individuals total. The unsheltered share, the ones with zero walls, zero protection from the elements, 247, dropped 9% statewide across California. In the city itself, Mayor Karen Bass is hammering home a sharper 17.5% reduction in street homelessness numbers. She's pushing hard as proof her strategy is finally working. But the real story slams you when you walk the actual hot zones. Skid Row downtown remains a sprawling tent city where survival means dodging daily fentanyl hits and sudden fires that can wipe out everything in minutes. Venice Beach, Little Tokyo, and the blocks around East 14th Street are jammed wall to wall with encampments so dense that one stray spark or one bad batch turns deadly in seconds. Strikingly, this modest dip runs straight against the national trend where homelessness keeps climbing in most major cities. LA is one of the few places showing any real pullback in unsheltered numbers, a rare bright spot that has officials claiming they're finally moving the needle. Yet here's the second controversial hook sparking heated backroom fights. Are these drops legitimate survival gains, or just clever shuffling moving bodies from sidewalk to temporary shelter, while the same lethal conditions keep grinding people down block after block? The physical reality on the asphalt stays brutally unforgiving either way. People are still enduring triple-digit heat that cooks them alive by day, freezing nights, open-air drug markets that kill at 46 times the normal rate, and constant violence in overcrowded camps with zero fire safety. These aren't abstract percentages, they're daily life and death calculations happening right now on the pavement. And right behind these modest improvements lurks the harsher truth we're about to tear into. Massive budgets are turning into black holes instead of delivering the permanent housing that actually ends this street nightmare once and for all. Drugs and untreated mental illness aren't side factors in Los Angeles, they're the operating system on the street. Strip away the headlines and what you see is a tight loop: fentanyl dependency, unstable cognition, broken sleep cycles. Then repeat. That loop dictates behavior, not policy. Start with fentanyl. It's cheap, fast-acting, and brutally efficient at keeping people locked into daily use. Physically, it resets the baseline. Within hours, the body demands another dose just to function. That means any plan that requires consistency appointments, paperwork, even showing up on time, collapses under biological pressure. Add in sleep deprivation exposure to the elements, and poor nutrition and cognitive bandwidth drops hard. Decision-making becomes short-term, reactive, survival-driven. Now, layer in mental health. A large portion of people on the street are dealing with untreated conditions: schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, severe depression. Without continuous care, symptoms don't stabilize. They compound. Outreach teams can offer help. Sure, but if someone doesn't trust the system or can't process the offer in that moment, the window closes fast. You can offer a bed, but if the mind isn't stable, that bed becomes temporary by default. Then comes what insiders call the service-resistant reality. It's not always refusal, it's misalignment. Rules in shelters, structured environments, sobriety requirements. These don't match the current state of someone deep in dependency or mental distress, so they opt out or cycle in and out without sticking. And here's the uncomfortable part: housing alone doesn't solve this. It helps absolutely, but without synchronized treatment, mental health support, addiction services, long-term follow-up, it's like placing a temporary patch on a system-level failure. If the root problem is neurological and chemical, why are we expecting housing alone to fix it? To be clear, there are small wins. Overdose numbers have shown signs of slowing in some areas, likely due to wider distribution of emergency response tools and outreach. But that's damage control, not resolution. At street level, the pattern is consistent and unforgiving. Until treatment housing and behavioral support move together at the same speed with real continuity, the cycle doesn't break. It just resets. No single headline can carry the full weight of what's happening on the streets of Los Angeles. Behind every number, every policy debate, every budget figure, there is a person trying to make it through another day with what little they have. And when you step back and look at it clearly, this isn't a simple issue with a clean solution. It's layered, complicated, and deeply human. The city has spent heavily. Programs have been launched, expanded, adjusted. Some people have found stability, even a new start. But many others remain caught in a cycle that doesn't break easily. Not because they don't want change, but because the path toward it is often fragmented, inconsistent, and difficult to follow without steady support. It's easy from a distance to ask why progress feels so slow. It's harder up close to see how many barriers exist at once housing health trust timing. Remove one obstacle and another still stands. And so the system moves forward, but not fast enough to meet the urgency on the ground. What makes this situation especially challenging is that responsibility doesn't fall on one group alone. It's shared across institutions, communities, and even the way society chooses to understand the problem. And perhaps that's why solutions feel incomplete. Because the issue itself isn't just about housing. It's about stability, dignity, and the kind of support that doesn't disappear after a few days or weeks. In the end, Los Angeles forces a difficult question. What does it really mean to solve something like this? Is it about numbers going down? Or about lives genuinely changing? And maybe the answer isn't immediate, but the need to keep asking, to keep looking closer, has never been more important.